Welcome back, traders. My name is Adam Harris. I'm a chief market analyst, and this is my week ahead, my analysis for the week commencing Monday, the 22nd of July. So basically, the big thing jumping right to the lead is that we have non-farm payroll on Friday, and so often we can see the markets kind of build up towards a release that happens on Friday. It switches around. Not really a great idea for traders to trade non-farm payroll because the market swings in multiple directions, but it could set the tone for the following week. Meaning, for example, if we have a really strong finish on the US dollar, it's more likely to continue the following week, and that gives us a really good sense of that. So that's in the run-up to this week. What I would say is I do want to know what's happening with CPI out of Europe. We've also got ADP on Wednesday, so non-farm numbers coming out there. The Fed interest rate decision as well. Again, remember that if inflation seems to be under control, there's just no reason to change the interest rate decision. So I would be surprised if they decided to do that. We've also, though, out of the UK, we've got PMI data. I want to see what's happening there. We've got the Bank of England interest rate decision, and that's kind of pretty much it. I'll keep tabs on the US stuff, but the US economy is doing fine, and I'll look at unemployment. We'll see. Ultimately, at some point, I do expect unemployment to go up, but it still sits around 4% as the target, and it bobs around between 3.8 and 4. We'll see if it goes to 4.1, but that's not a red flag. It just is something to start paying attention to. So that being said, let's go to the charts. Okay, so we got a spike this week in the VIX to the upside, but you have to take it in context. You have to look at the monthly to get a sense of it. What I mean by that is a spike in isolation doesn't mean anything until it's a really, really big one. So I've actually highlighted here this zone, which shows if it starts to reach what I would say an area where you want to pay attention to. Where it is right now, it still sits amongst decent lows, so it's a bit of a spike at this time. It is not necessarily the beginning of big things. We'll keep an eye on it, but for now, the markets are still relatively happy, so that's why I bring that up. Then we've got the dollar index. So the dollar index produced a bullish candle off this area of support. We'll see if it's enough for it to follow through. So what I'll be looking for this week is a break of the high. We still have lower highs and lower lows, so within this kind of range, we're still slightly weak, and we're edging towards that. So will the dollar continue down? We'll have to see if that's the case, or if it breaks up here, will it work its way back up towards 105? So it's very difficult to tell that at this time because there's no clear trend in place. Here we have a look at euro dollar. So euro dollar coming up towards the top of this wedge, and therefore I think it's fair to say we could see a move back down towards the lows, the bottom of this upward sloping trend line. I hope that you can see this. It still looks relatively bullish, and we'll see it's bumping its head up here, but we could see it continue to push up. The dollar is a little bit weak at the moment. So again, let me just highlight something here as well, because some people are very quick to jump around the dollar index is going to be replaced as the world reserve currency. The only way that happens is if we believe that the US democracy and the US as a model no longer exists. That's it. So if the US is no longer the US and it cannot be trusted, then it would lose its status as the world's reserve symbol. So as long as it retains its democracy, it stays largely the same type of animal that it has been for the last 200 and something odd years, then it will remain the world's reserve currency. Okay, so the easiest way to determine that is to look at the stability, the political stability and the economic stability. Economically, it's doing fine. It's still super strong. It's doing really well, but politically, it's incredibly unstable. In fact, it hasn't been this unstable since the Civil War. So it's ironic because the Civil War here is basically between the same type of people, the same people that want to lynch black people and have slaves. And bizarrely, but the difference is that this time they want a king instead of the very reason that America fought for independence. And we forget this. When you live outside the US, you forget something. They've had two major wars, which is essentially the war for independence so that they could just be America and not be ruled by the British. And then the second one, which ultimately was freedom for everybody within the US, which was fought by Lincoln and was settled, and it was ultimately to do with slavery. Okay, so those are the two big things. So there was the American independence and Civil War. And that was really, Civil War was about slavery essentially, but freedom for everybody in America. And so culturally, it's just very interesting. But I want you to be aware of that as we are definitely in uncharted territory. Okay, so let's have a look at sterling against the US dollar. You can see sterling here pushing up, looking relatively strong. I mean, compared to where the lows were in 2022, it's looking relatively strong. We'll see if it still gets knocked back. We're kind of in the last third of the month. We'll see if that happens. We've got a bearish candle here. Again, that dollar could push through and be really strong. We'll have to see. And ultimately, even if it has a strong week, Friday could reverse that and it could finish weak. So the US dollar could start out strong and finish weak. We'll have to see how that goes. So here we go. Worth mentioning here, the Aussie dollar has broken out of the range, comes back, and here what I'm looking for is a bullish candle here to take it out. So bullish candle on the weekly to see it head out and continue up. So that Aussie dollar looking relatively strong potential for the week coming. We can see Kiwi dollar, on the other hand, has broken outside of this range, this consolidation to the downside. And so potentially we're going to see the Kiwi dollar head lower. We'll see if that's the case. Then we got dollar yen. So dollar yen again, this is a relatively bullish pushback. We spoke about this last week. I want to see if we could continue. So it's very important this week to see that we break the high if we're going to get that push to the upside. Failing that, if we break the low first, then I would expect a deeper correction down towards that 150 level. Dollar Swissy, again, this looks more bearish than bullish. It is at a level of support. It's going to test it. Let me just mark that for you so you can see that. That's over here, resistance, support, we'll see, but it's looking more bearish than bullish. We could see this head low, which again hints at a weaker US dollar. So we've got very much kind of mixed signals here. Then we've got dollar CAD, which hints at a stronger dollar. So right now this looks as though it's heading up to the top of the range. So once it gets there, we'll see what happens. We're going to have to just see what happens there. So we'll see if it continues up in the short term. That's what I think is going to happen. Let's move across and have a look at gold. Interesting to me, there's a similarity in gold's behavior here to the Aussie dollar. A lot of people will draw correlations to that. They can be correlated, but they're not always correlated. So I'm just highlighting that right now. They are. You can see that failure to get above that. So far, the weekly candle showing a strong rejection there. And we're likely to see a bit of a break below if we see a break below that, we could see this head down towards the bottom of the range. Remember, it's consolidating, and last week I spoke about how within the weekly it could break out to the upside, but the monthly is showing this continued failure. So it's very important that we see how the month closes. If it closes up above these highs, it's good and probably will likely break out and keep going. If it closes near the lows in the coming week, or especially after NFP, for example, if we get a stronger dollar, we could see it then trigger a move down towards 2200. Right, like crude, quick look at that. Actually, natural gas, quick look at natural gas. Natural gas just continues to drop and drop and drop and drop. We can now remove this. This trend is not going to change anytime soon. Then we can have a look at light crude oil. So, for example, if you were an options trader, natural gas would be the gift that keeps on giving, because you'd probably be able to buy a put option, for example, and just continue to milk that. Light crude oil. So light crude kind of finishing low. You can see that rejection of that level also, by the way, within this triangle wedge shape that we've been talking about. And so far this behavior makes complete sense. You can see that reaction off that level. So for now, I would expect it to head potentially a little bit lower, possibly down towards that 72 level, but it makes complete sense. Let's move along and have a look at the global indices. Okay, so keep in mind that we're still in a bull market. Any correction ideally should be seen just as a buying, well, at least as a well, look. I think a lot of people make the mistake of always looking on the daily, so they misjudge the timings. But we can get weekly retracements that can last a full month, and we know September, for example, can be a terrible month often. Now, having said that, I don't know what the stats are, the data is for election years for September's. Maybe they're different. I can look it up and see what the story is here. So just showing you this, you can see here that the Dow attempted to break out of this rising wedge. It's not done yet. Let's see if this week continues to push higher. Otherwise, a move down. It's really the break below the low that's significant. Right now, we're still potentially in the game. This is just a pullback at this time. I wouldn't really qualify it as a failed breakout just yet. We see the S&P had a nice pullback. This is a good area. We've been looking for a bit of a pullback here. I should get rid of these things now because they just create a bit of a mess. There we go. So here I'm looking for a weekly pullback. I'm very happy with this. Let's see if we get it. So we're just going to mark this area as a possible area where we get a bit of a pullback and see if we get that in the coming week or two. Let's see. NFP can change the game. Same for NASDAQ, the same thing again. We're basically in a weekly retracement. I want you to be aware of this. This is a weekly retracement currently. So this week we could finish with a green candle by the end of the week, or we could pull back a little bit further. Could be the beginning of a monthly retracement. So we need to have some cognizance of that fact. We're heading into August, which leads to September, which leads to October. So we could be at the beginning. In fact, it's worthwhile highlighting this now. We could be at the beginning of that September slump now. Could be the case. So just putting it on record that this could lead ultimately to a monthly retracement or a bigger correction, which could ultimately turn around towards October, then start to rebuild if we, if our behavior is similar to last year. Russell has broken out of its broken out, but obviously hit some resistance almost immediately, and then it's taking a bit of a pullback. We've got the FTSE, which stays within this range, starting to drip a little bit low, but it can come back down towards 8045. I'm happy with that. This whole area still counts as a potential buying point, so I'm just going to mark that for now. We've got the DAX, which is producing a lower high, so this could be leading towards a bit of a correction down towards the lows here. So I'm going to mark this now, and then we'll see what ultimately happens here. It looks a little bit like a head and shoulders forming on the daily. These little traditional patterns, this could be a potential head and shoulders. So let's, excuse me, let me draw that in. Let me draw in the head and shoulders pattern so that we can kind of mark that. And if that ultimately does turn out to be the case, we would see a correction, usually quite a big one, probably down to about 17,000, which is not a big one on the monthly, which is down towards here. So that could be the case. Let's mark that in and see if we do ultimately, if something like that tends to play out. We'll see. Got the ASX out of Australia, looks good, broken out of its consolidation. Looks good, it's broken out of that beautiful breakout there of that wedge that was forming, and it broke out to the upside, which was pretty much what we were expecting. The probabilities were playing out. Now we've bumped our heads up here on the Nikkei against resistance there. Actually, I also spoke last week about the Hang Seng. I want to have a look at that because I don't think we broke out to the upside there, but the question is, did we break below the low? So I want to talk about that in a second. So here we've got a bit of bearish divergence. We could see a bit of a correction here back down towards these lows here. Not worried. Again, we're running into September where we often get a monthly correction, and so I'll be relatively happy with that if that is the case, because that leads us into a nice October through till April run if we get that. Okay, so last week I spoke about this bullish candle forming over here. We didn't break the high, so that's one of the criteria that must happen. We're still above the 50-period moving average. So what I'm going to be looking for this week is to see, look, the lowest I think that we could reasonably fall within this would be kind of back down towards these lows over here to test support. We'll see. But that was, I'm very happy with my analysis of that. I would still have a buy order sitting above those highs, because if we come back in, we will then be triggering high. We're still above this. We're still bullish here. All of this looks good. The question is, will we get a nice bullish rejection candle here, which could be a possible re-entry signal? We'll see. That's all it. I just want to carry on from my analysis from last week. We need to break the high. That's one of the conditions. We need that follow through from the market, which we didn't get. But the setup is still valid in my mind, meaning that when we break above this high, we are still then picking up into a nice move for HK. All right, let's continue. So you can see here that Anheuser-Busch, not really going anywhere, not terrible, not great. Let's have a look at Apple. Apple starting a bit of a correction here. This is good. Nice little weekly a nice little weekly correction would be good. Otherwise, nice and strong. We've got Amazon pulling back down. So this, to me, I think will probably lead to a little bit of a bigger pullback for Amazon. AT&T looking fine, but let's just mark this resistance level where it is sitting at the moment. Has to get past that, but otherwise looks pretty nice and ticking along nicely. So a bit of a pullback would make sense there. ARK Innovation stuck within its range. So I would say, is it fair to say that ARK has missed the entire bull run that has happened, the start of the bull run, which has been going since January 2023 and is now almost at the end of 2024? Yes, it has. ASML. Okay, big drop over here. So this is the company that produces the machines that are able to manufacture the chips that technology companies use. And so that's taken a bit of a hit. You can see that's a strong level that has caused a bit of a reaction there. For now, I'm going to sort of allow it to kind of stay that way. Let's see how it reacts when it gets back down towards the moving averages there and see if it recovers. We've got Glencore also staying largely within its range, no change there. Tesco, nice and strong, really beautiful pullback there, looking good, looking good. So fine, ticking along. Amex struggling to get past this level of resistance. So let's put this in over there. And Berkshire Hathaway. So Berkshire Hathaway will take a little bit of a hit here. It was within this triangle, managed to break out, managed to push through this level. I want to see if it could continue to do that. It's pulling back this week, so a nice bullish candle this week and a continuation. If it finishes higher again by the end of NFP, that would be a good sign as well. Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola continues to push higher. That looks really good. We've got BP and Exxon are coming back down towards this level here. Again, you know, I expect them to probably stay above these lows, but also kind of range bound for now. Exxon struggling to break out of this range, but looks okay. Might actually continue. So it'd be interesting to me. I don't know, by the way, the fundamentals of the two different companies, but I would love to know what the difference is between those two. That is why Exxon has a better edge over BP. I'm just curious. Estee Lauder, I'm still waiting for this bullish candle. We've started to drop below the lows there. So again, Estee Lauder continues to disappoint me in this one. And it's okay. It's fine. I mean, out of all the stocks that I have, this is the one that has failed the most. I exited, I had Tesla originally and I had ARK, and I exited both of those. But a while back in, during the bear market as well, I did that. So whereas here, I still have Estee Lauder, but it's just failing to turn around. So very disappointed there, and it's given back so much of its value. It's one thing for it to not go anywhere, but it's another for it to just sink all the way back down. And then we have GM, which continues to move high, which looks fine, just bumping its head as it goes. Morgan Chase, also a bit of a failure here as well. So we might get a bit of a monthly correction on Morgan Chase. QQQ, very nice, healthy correction here. You can see the monthly there potentially preparing for a bit of a pullback. So overall, I think it's nice and healthy, but I think we could be entering that with that correction stage on the monthly or weekly. Battling here for Adidas to get through that level of resistance. We'll see if it comes back a bit lower. Meta also here starting to fail a little bit at these highs. We could see a bit of a deeper correction there. I'm trying to take it within the context of where we are. You can see as well Morgan Stanley starting to take a bit of a hit there as well. We could see it start to head low. So this week is a little bit unpredictable with that, because we could be seeing the beginning of a bigger correction for these, which could lead to that. So Nvidia, for example, we could see that back down towards that 88 level. We got Netflix, which will likely come back down towards these highs here as well. This is an area where I'd mark to see if we turn around. So we'll see how the following week finishes. It's really important to see that. We're still at the bottom of the range for PayPal. PayPal, very similar to ARK, just unable to change their business model. Excuse me, not really convinced that with the existing business model they can ever recover. They're going to have to do something very different to do that. Okay, so we've got Spotify as well, getting ready for a little bit of a correction here. We've got Spider, looking good, could continue. It's got a strong level of resistance at 50-period moving average, overlapping with a nice run number with a level of resistance. So it's got to really battle to get past that, but if it can, that's a good sign. FedEx continues to push a little bit higher. We've got Tesla struggling this week, bumped into resistance again at the previous high. So remember how I was saying it was sort of neutral, bullish, or bullish, neutral. I stand by that. We still needed to pull back, produce a bullish signal here, produce a higher low. So if price could pull back down to this level towards that 211, 200, turn around and then start heading up and break this high, then it goes back into its original kind of bull move. So we need to see that happen. So right now it's sort of bullish, neutral. We'll see. We'll just have to see how that goes. We've got Vanguard. Very nice and healthy, potentially preparing for a bit of a weekly pullback here again. And then we finish off with Walt Disney. Walt Disney in this area where really it's still at the bottom in this area, but it's similar to to Estee Lauder, where it just keeps pushing lower and lower and is now, below that 50-period moving average, starting to look more and more bearish. So starting to look as though it's not going to be able to turn around. I want to see if that's going to happen. We've definitely got bullish divergence here. We've got that, but it's not enough. We need to see a bullish reaction out of that. Then we've got bonds. So now we look at the US. We've got the 10-year T-note now above that 50-period moving average, just trickling above it for now. Nothing major to announce there. Eurobond also sort of having a mildly bullish week, but also not really above it. It's got to get above here where the message starts to change, where the story starts to change. Bitcoin. Excuse me. So Bitcoin recovered in this area. It's still looking good. We had another bullish week. That looks good. We have Ethereum within its range. You can see the range over here. Also had another bullish week. Let's see if we could follow through on that. Binance also pushing up a little bit higher. It was Solana, and Solana managed to do that. So we could get rid of this now. We got the bullish candles. We've got the follow through. So it should be able to push on up to those highs. And then Cardano was the weakest. Managed to get that bullish one and not really follow through. So of the whole bunch, Cardano is not performing as well as it should. It should be able to push up towards that 0.6 level, and it's not really performing that well. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to leave you with that. Don't forget, so we've got non-farm payroll. We've got quite a bit of stuff this week in terms of that. So the week could go either way. So I would say whatever trading opportunities traders look at up until Thursday, they are probably a higher probability. But once Friday comes on, once Friday starts, then all bets are off the table, because it's very difficult to predict which way NFP is how the market is going to respond. It's not even the numbers. It's how the market is going to respond to the numbers. It could have a very negative reaction to a very small increase in unemployment. You never really know which one it's going to respond to, which is why trading NFP is very akin to gambling. But anyway, on that note, I wish you all the best, and I will speak to you next week.